Hello, everybody. It is Labor Day, and we are laboring. Tim Benz, Mark Madden, Madden Benz Unfiltered with you. Mark up at the lake. I'm here in Pittsburgh, back from a weekend trip to Syracuse to watch some college football open the season. We are brought to you today by our new sponsor. Thanks to the folks at Ultra Genius and the Barber School of Pittsburgh for sponsoring us throughout the summer. Football season is here, and Bella Construction sponsoring us throughout the football campaign. 27 years of experience. They specialize in roofing, siding, windows, and doors. Their large purchasing power means unbeatable prices and top quality. For free estimates, call 724-515-5163 or visit mybellaRoof.com. Bella Construction, where quality and affordability meet. Bella's worked on Mark's home. They've worked on my home, and we're happy to have them on board as our new sponsor here at Madden Benz Unfiltered. Mark, fresh back from his new contract, a saga that took so long it was almost Brayden Aiyuk in scope. But, Mark, you have a new deal, and it is ironclad.
Yeah, I had less thought about my deal than I did about the Aiyuk deal, and I had considerable doubt about my deal. The Aiyuk thing, in retrospect, was just fantasy land. It was never, ever going to happen. And I'm not sure that it's fair to say that Omar Khan and the Steelers got played, but I think they were used for leverage. I don't think there was ever a realistic chance Aiyuk was coming to Pittsburgh.
Well, Mark, okay, that might be the case, but if they had held on to Deontay Johnson and in their hearts they had always wanted to trade Johnson and this prospect came up and Johnson was here to deal to get Aiyuk an upgrade there, do you think it would have gotten done in that case?
Maybe. I think the biggest faux pas that Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin committed was they traded Deontay Johnson without a definite plan B, and now they have the worst wide receiving core in the league.
And we don't really know how good Dante Jackson is going to be. I was really dubious of the acquisition myself, but I've liked what I've seen in camp. I've liked what I've seen in the preseason. I think there's something there. There's an upgrade there. They're definitely better than they were before, but, you know, are they better in the secondary to the point that they would have been at wide receiver if Johnson had still been here? And granted, I'm not the world's biggest Deontay Johnson fan either.
I'm not the biggest Dante Jackson fan either, but as you mentioned on the podcast, they probably could have had him for free because Carolina probably would have cut him. I just think that this whole thing from top to bottom is more roster mismanagement by the Steelers, exacerbated by the fact that they traded Deontay Johnson in a snit. They just didn't like him anymore and wanted to get rid of him. Again, without a plan B. That's the most important thing to stress about the Steelers' wide receiving room, where it ended up, and the trade of Deontay Johnson, Tim, is they went into all this without a plan B, not knowing for sure what would happen after they traded Deontay Johnson.
All right, so I want to hear from Steelers fans on this because it's come back to bite them in the sense that they weren't able to backfill the wide receiver position. And I kept hearing, you know, when I brought up issues that we're talking about right now, when the trade was made, oh, it's only May. Oh, it's only June. It's not even training camp yet. It's not the end of training camp yet.
Con artist! Con artist!
Right, yes. Just tweet the hashtag con artist and everything will be fine. Well, right now you're going into the season with Van Jefferson as your number 2 wide receiver, and that's overextending him, and then the dominoes fall from there.
And, Tim, had they kept Deontay Johnson and their receiving room was Pickens, Johnson, and Van Jefferson, even that wouldn't be great.
No, it wouldn't be. No.
It'd be okay, but it wouldn't be great. Now, it really is the worst receiving room in the league. Coupled with a quarterback who's, you know, I mean, was good once and certainly, you know, put up some interesting numbers last year, like the red zone stuff and the rushing for first down stuff. But really, Russ Wilson's hanging on by a thread.
That said, I still do think he's a better option than Justin Fields, and we all know that the whole conversation about there being a quarterback controversy in Pittsburgh was contrived and invented by the national media. But forgetting that, Mark, how close are the two in your eyes? How close are the two as quarterback talents at this point in their respective careers?
I think if Justin Fields was the quarterback for this offense with this other personnel, he would offer an interesting upside in terms of what he would post in rushing yards. The Steelers would lead the league in rushing if Justin Fields was the quarterback, and at least that'd be something to hang their hat on. But the offense would also be all over the place. turnovers sloppy. So I think Russell Wilson at least adds organization and leadership. Now, what that amounts to, I don't know. Will making the switch to take the risk at some point make sense? I don't know that either. I think that quarterback room is not far behind the receiver room in being really bad.
Yeah, so I want to hear from Steelers fans on that too. I actually think that the quarterback competition, as it's been labeled, and I don't want to label it that way because I don't think it exists, but the quarterback situation has narrowed because of the state of the offensive line. The offensive line is so banged up and so reconfigured from what they thought it was going to be that as a result, you might need the more mobile quarterback just to stay alive.
Well, I don't know about that. I see what you're saying, but Fields gets sacked a lot, no matter how mobile he is, and he turns the ball over more. So I'm going with Russ for the time being. But yeah, I mean, my train of thought fluctuates here because I just don't think it's a very good offense. I don't think it's a very good football team.
They're probably going to be 9-8 again. I'm modifying my pick. But they might not be too.
I've
been saying the entire offseason that they'd be 10-7 in the last team in the playoff picture, but maybe a better version of what that was a season ago when the numbers were exactly the same. I'm walking that back now because I don't feel like they're in a great spot going into the start of the season, and they have to be good early, which they rarely are, I think, to stay afloat because their schedule is so bad on the back half.
There's a bigger downside than there's an upside, Tim. I think 9-8 is an easy pick, so I'm probably going to make it. But I think they're closer to 6-11 than they are to 11-6.
Well, that might be true. But are you willing to go that far down? Like, do you think this is the first year that they go below 500 in Tomlin's era?
God, I hope so.
That's when it stops saying non-losing seasons.
I actually think if they had a losing season, that would lift a burden and that they would be much easier to evaluate. Maybe there would be accountability from Tomlin after that.
Yeah, and I think that would go to the quarterback position too. They might have to do something more dynamic than picking up a QB that one team.
Yeah, but the only way to do that, Tim, is to finish 5-12.
Yeah, and get one of the top spots.
I keep saying over and over, and no one wants to hear it, but I'm right. When Ben popped his elbow, they should have tanked. When 5-12 got Justin Herbert. Instead, they traded for a safety. Who gives a frig who the safety is if he's not Troy?
Well, that said, Herbert hasn't done anything in the playoffs either, although that might be more of a function of the franchise than it is.
Yeah, but he's a real quarterback.
He is, and we'll find out more about him when they play the Chargers in the not-too-distant future. But as far as the Falcons go, Mark, I know you're high on their chances of covering the spread. It's just 3, but you think Atlanta's going to win that first game, don't you?
Yeah, outright. Kirk Cousins is a stats machine, a points machine. It's going to take more than 20 points to beat the Falcons, and I can't even see the Steelers scoring 20 points. And the Steelers play scared football, too. We don't talk about that enough. We think of it as smart football. We mislabel it. But in 2024, where the name of the game is scoring more and faster, they play scared football, trading field position, keeping it close, looking for a big play on defense. That's scared football, not smart football.
I don't know if they have the weapons to be anything but scared. I'd be scared of my own offense, too.
I'm scared.
Like their best option is to give the ball to Harris or Warren and hope the offensive line blocks well.
I don't disagree, but let's call it what it is.
Yeah, and I don't even know who the offensive line is going to be right now.
Well, the injuries have given them an excuse. But they should have had Jones, Tiamalu, Frazier, Daniels, and Fatanu from left to right on the first day of camp and let their talent settle in, and they didn't give it a chance.
All right, so those are some Steelers thoughts to begin the season. I want to get to some other topics, too, including the fading of the Pittsburgh Pirates, the collapse of the Pittsburgh Pirates. What do you think happens in the offseason, Mark? Shelton gone, Charrington gone, both or neither?
Well, first off, Tim, the Pirates are not fading. To quote the Big Lebowski, the plane has crashed into the mountain. I think Shelty goes, but they stay in-house and hire Don Kelly as the manager. Other than that, I don't think they make any dramatic moves. I think the moves they made, the payroll they added was Dela Cruz and IKF. Of course, balanced out by trading Martin Perez, which is something that we ignore. I like the trades they made at the deadline, but if my math serves me correctly, they came out of the deadline with a slightly lower payroll, which is just so Pirates.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't expect them to make any big moves this offseason. Do you?
No, none at all. We've been saying for years now that there's a giant vacancy at first base. Just sign a left-handed power hitter. You could put a glove on their hand, and they won't do that. They've had myriad opportunities to do something like that and avoided every single one. And I think now with what they're doing with O'Neal Cruz, they're viewing that as like this chip to not have to do something. You know what I mean? Like what they've done at the deadline and moving Cruz, that's going to look like their big move in the offseason when they come back with a reconfigured lineup next year.
Well, right. And they'll present it as such. And their other big move in the offseason might be if Bubba Chandler makes the rotation.
Right. Keep adding to the starting pitching. Correct. And even that started to crack. I mean, what did Keller do yesterday? 5 1/3, 11 hits. I know he was.
Yeah, maybe Mitch Keller and Jared Jones are just okay.
That's entirely possible. They might have just had their best run before the All-Star break together.
Tim, hold on. We got to address this. This Gary guy, Double M, because I'm on a blocking spree on Twitter.
Okay.
If you even mildly annoy me, I block you on Twitter. Okay. And this Gary, can we get his thing up here? Double M, please unblock me from the Twitter. I am so sorry. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm going to give you a chance here, pal. I want a really fawning, butt-kissing apology. If you do that now, I'll consider. But I want a really fawning, butt-kissing apology. You have 90 seconds. We'll get back to it.
Okay, so you want this right now, extemporaneously, stream of consciousness, just type it and hit send. That's what you want.
Right now, yes, correct.
Okay, all right. So we'll give them 90 seconds and we'll check back in as we continue to rip the Pirates.
Yes.
I get what you're saying about Shelton, and I would be fine if they moved on from Shelton. I do have a sort of, I don't know how you separate the two, though. Do you want to put Donnie Kelly in a position where he's the manager who's been promoted when you're just going to bring in a new GM next year anyway if it doesn't work out in 2025?
Well, I don't know that they're going to bring in a new GM.
In 2026 if things go badly in 2025?
It depends on what their definition of badly is. It might be different than yours and mine.
Oh, well, that's fair. But I just
Tim, they're going to get close to 2 million in attendance this year. Certainly 1.9. That's after 1.6 2 years ago, 1.8 last year. So the owner has no complaint given the priorities of the franchise.
I know Donnie Kelly. I like Donnie Kelly. I've talked to Donnie a million times. I don't want him to get this job. I don't want this foisted upon him. I want something better for him for his first.
Yeah, but where else is he going to go, Tim?
Detroit. I don't know. Like they'll fire their manager eventually too. Like somewhere besides here, because here.
But I think Donnie is highly regarded enough that if he managed in Pittsburgh and didn't go great, he would get a chance somewhere else. Where Shelton's managerial career at the big league level is done once he leaves the Pirates.
You're saying that because he's a Leland disciple and that carries some cachet. Is that where you're going with that thought?
Yes, and I think he's just a better manager than Shelton. Without having ever managed a game, I feel confident saying that, yes.
Well, I kind of felt the same way about Shelton initially, too. Like, they hired him. I talked to him a couple of times. I'm like, oh, I like this guy. I don't want him to have this job. This can't be your first job because you're never going to recover from this.
Well, Tim, I don't care who gets the job because it's an impossible task.
Boy, Gary Burrito's running out of time here, Mark. You might just want to hit send now. He's not going to make the 90-second.
Yeah, screw him. Let's move on.
Real quick, because you and I haven't talked in this forum yet, Mark, about the Rutger McGroarty trade for Brayden Yager. What'd you think of it?
Here it is, Tim. Let's pop it up here.
Thank you for the chance to have you unblock me, Double N. I've been a big MFer for years. You are absolutely the best Pittsburgh sports coverage.
Well, Tim, I'm reminded of what happened in that 70s show. When Hyde was watching a program and Kelso changed the channel and Hyde told him to change it back.
Okay.
Kelso's response was, no. So
plus,
no,
he's
Gary,
also he's breaking the rules. He said he was texting and driving. He's actually watching the show while driving, and he's also sending this message while driving. So he's a scofflaw.
To quote Al Pacino in Godfather, sorry, Tom, you're out.
Although Sean does say not bad for driving and typing. I'll give him that. That was pretty good. He doesn't need an editor. What do you think of the McGroarty trade?
They got a guy. They probably need a guy. more like. Like now they have Bunting and O'Connor and McGroarty up front, all at left wing likely, that are big and kind of tough and go to the blue paint. I think that Dubas has done a good job adding that type of player to a roster that desperately needed those. I think McGroarty's closer to the NHL than Yager. With McGroarty playing college, it's easier to get him right to the NHL than with juniors where they have that antiquated deal. Or if you don't make the NHL team, you got to go, back to junior. So McGroarty could play in the AHL if he and the Penguins determine that's what's best. Then you bring him up in November or whatever. So, yeah, I like the deal.
I like the deal, too. I think it's a better fit for both teams since McGroarty wasn't going to play there. The Penguins gave up a really good asset to get him, but I think they upgraded the asset. They're better. I think they're one notch better from what they would have been if no trade had been made, so I'll take it. You got McGroarty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not knocking Yager. He, I think it's going to be a good pro. I just think that McGroarty's a quicker fit and a better fit.
One thing I'm a little not worried about, but I want to see how they figure it out. Apparently, McGroarty's best spot in the power play where he was quite good at Michigan was the bumper position. And that's where they figured out Bunting was pretty good, too, and he helped the Penguins there. I'm not sure how they finagle that. Or maybe they just have one of them in the first power play unit, one in the second power play unit.
They better figure it out because the only way this team makes the playoffs, the only shortcut available is if they finish top 5 in the power play, which their talent dictates they should be all along. But the only way to do that is sit on the right half wall.
Sean asks, thoughts on Johnny Hockey and his brother. That's a sad, sad situation. It is. It was a terrible, tragic event that took place when they both got killed by. Did they ever figure out, did he blow a breathalyzer? I mean, he talked, they said he's probably
I don't know. I mean, I feel real bad about it. It's not somebody I knew, so I try not to dwell on it. Like I sometimes feel like the outpouring of sympathy for people we didn't know is a bit overbearing. But the guy was a class act, a great hockey player. By all accounts, his brother, the same thing. So I'm very sorry about what happened.
Yeah, and even in an era where maybe international hockey isn't talked about quite as much as it was, back in the 80s and the Olympics were a bigger deal. He was a really good international player for the U.S. too. Not just an all-time great college hockey player, but statistically, because he wasn't on a lot of great teams, Mark, so he played in the World Hockey Championships a lot, and he put up some really good numbers for Team USA there.
He's a real hockey player, no question about that. He'll be missed on a lot of levels.
Yeah, but I did want to bring that up, so thanks, Sean, for bringing it up here. We didn't get to it on the podcast. I did want to, and we brought this up late in the podcast, Mark, let's spend a little bit more time with it, not a ton, but just a couple thoughts on the college football starting. I know you got to see some of the West Virginia-Penn State game before that the weather washed it out for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those classic games where you can pick the turning points out easily. Like early on, West Virginia went for 4th and short instead of kicking the field goal. They failed. Penn State scored a touchdown right after. West Virginia had a chance to score a touchdown late in the second half. They settled for a field goal. Penn State went right down the field and scored a touchdown to make it 20-6. So Penn State was clearly the better team. But there were moments where clearly they separated themselves, and then came the delay, which meant I had to switch stations at my friend Rob's house and watch Pitt. And, they played Kent State, and that's just a joke. But, I mean, that offense is interesting anyway. I don't know if it's going to, that no huddle, no stop ever type thing is going to work against a good team, though.
I was watching the Pitt game a little bit before I went to the Dome to watch Syracuse when I was up there, and I thought watching their offense, to your point, you can't really tell how great it's going to be, how bad it's going to be, whatever, against a team like Kent. You can't really forecast that out into how they're going to perform against the ACC. But the collective of it, they were on the same page more often than they were not. They were tighter with it than I expected. You run that kind of fast up-tempo thing, you can get sloppy with it. But for the most part, I thought they were pretty good. And the Holstein kid looks like he's got something at quarterback. And some of the skilled position players, that Reed kid is wicked fast. The running back, and I know they lost Hammond. That's a big story for them.
What happened there?
He was ineligible, and I didn't really hear why. What's that?
For what?
I don't know. I didn't hear why. I didn't hear what the statement was.
Well,
but
one of my people at Pitt, I don't have many, said that Pitt's not surprised and even all that upset by it, which doesn't make sense to me. He was their leading rusher, right?
Yeah, but the Reed kid played for the offensive coordinator and put up huge numbers at Western Carolina or Kentucky or whatever it was where he was last year. And they like him a lot, and he is incredibly fast. I don't know how durable he is, but he's fast, and he looks like he's a good fit for the offense.
Tim, this Gary guy's now asking questions. The guy walked on Twitter. Huh?
Is that allowed?
No, he's out here too.
Sorry, Gary Burrito.
Gary Burrito guy, he's out here too. He's out. No, get rid of this. He's out.
Theoretically, you wanted to talk about Cordero Patterson, which I don't even know if that's...
He's out. No, we get rid of this. Get rid of this.
All right, let's get to some other comments and some other questions. Sean says...
Why did you do this?
Block him like the Carl Krauser X. Is that
right. Yeah, exactly.
Sean says, might have been a good idea to sign Juju to a one-year contract. Perhaps he didn't want to come here. I don't know that he did. I'm sure he would have preferred to go back to Kansas City, which he did. There's not much to be had here as the fourth wide receiver, but everybody's a fourth wide receiver here.
I think he's just shot. I think his knees are done. So, and plus, it would have been a distraction, another distraction on a team that just doesn't need one.
Eric says, not a fan of Pickett, never was, and still contend he might be the worst QB to ever start for the Steelers, but booing him at the Pick game was pretty shameful. He was decent in school. I didn't know that happened, honestly. Did you know that happened?
Yes, and Eric misspelled funny. He spelled it Shameful. It's pretty funny is what it is.
I wondered about
the fact that Pickett got booed at the Pitt game shows you, I mean, at a Pitt game, Tim, shows the pecking order for teams in this town.
Well, that has crossed my mind quite a bit since you left and things went badly here, how his Pitt legacy would be remembered and dealt with, because now it's a delicate balance between the two. It shouldn't be. In theory, it shouldn't be. But when you have so many fans who cross over between the two teams and so many Pitt fans who went to bat for him as the quarterback of the Steelers, and not only did it go bad on the field, the way it wrapped up leaving Pittsburgh looked bad as well. I don't know how you separate the two. It's going to be tough for him. Like, he should be always treated as a golden alumnus there, and he probably won't be.
Yes, but all of Kenny Pickett's problems are of his own making.
Brian says below 500, 8-9 or 7-10, they'd still be in the mushy middle. They need a 5-12 or 4-13 season. Are you ready?
What I keep saying.
Are you ready to give your overall prediction, Mark? Or do you do that the Friday before the show?
Friday before, correct.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'll give mine right now because I'll write it at some point this week anyway. I'm going with 9-8 and probably the 8th team in the AFC as opposed to the 7th at 10-7, which I think they've got to be to get in, as they barely were a season ago. Sean also added, Steelers play like they're always winning by 17. That's probably a good way of describing another way, Mark, what you had said about the way that they approach their offense. They're always acting like this is a game where they're running out the clock. What they're trying to do is limit possession so their offense doesn't have to be on the field more often.
Yeah, and Tim, how long has it been that way? I mean, since Ben got hurt probably, and he came back, he was, not what he was. They've been playing scared football for half a decade or more now.
And you look at how many times they've already had a chance to address the quarterback situation, and they still haven't gotten it right once. It's like they missed on Rudolph twice. They thought he was too good when they drafted him, and then they didn't realize how good he was when they had him. They went out and got Trubisky. That was a screw-up. They screwed up Pickett. Now we'll see what's going on with these two guys, with Fields and Wilson. But if they don't work out, they're going to be 0 for 5 with quarterbacks in 4 years.
Too much with that organization is based on who Tomlin likes and doesn't like. And nobody wants to hear that, but it's true. You look at Dan Moore Jr. Dan Moore Jr. should have been pulled from left tackle the minute they drafted Broderick Jones last year and your franchise guy put there. But Tomlin likes Dan Moore Jr. Tomlin liked Deontay Johnson for a long time, to the point where he benched Mitch Trubisky because he got in a halftime argument with Deontay Johnson. But then suddenly he didn't like Deontay Johnson and traded him haphazardly. He didn't like Mason Rudolph. And, no matter how good Mason Rudolph played last year, Mason Rudolph should still be on the team now, Tim. It should be Mason Rudolph and somebody else, with Mason Rudolph having a chance to compete for the job in the preseason. Because Mason Rudolph's quarterback play last year in those last 3 games is better than the play they're going to get this year. I guarantee that. But it's all about like.
And I'll retreat back to a point I frequently make about how they approach the draft after the trade was made for Jackson, the Johnson for Jackson trade. in that we could say, you and I and all the fans can say what we think about Dan Moore. They have to be honest with themselves. They love Dan Moore. And for as much as we might rip Dan Moore for not being as good as Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, he's better at tackle than anything else they have at receiver. So if they were going to approach the draft knowing that Dan Moore was still going to be in the mix at left tackle, don't take the tackle this year then. Take the tackle next year when you decide, for as much as you like Dan Moore, you're not going to pay him as a free agent. So take the tackle next year. Take the receiver or center in the first round to free yourself up for the other one in the second round. But they just kind of added to the tackle mix with Fautanu anyway and put themselves in this box.
You know what they're doing to Broderick Jones, too? I'm going to compare Broderick Jones. This is way off the charts, Tim. Remember Alexei Morozov?
Yes.
Penguins drafted him. First-round pick. Very promising offensive talent. Had his moments in Pittsburgh. But even though he was a top 6 talent, they always played him third or fourth line.
Right.
Well, guess what he became?
A bad third or fourth liner because he
third
couldn't
or
play.
fourth liner.
Yeah, he couldn't play that kind of position.
He started just chipping it in, chipping it out, just not playing to his skills. And then he went back to the KHL and led the league in scoring like 7 times. I mean, it's the KHL, but still. And I think he's the league commissioner now.
Is he
which
really?
Would be great, right? I think so, yeah. I think he's the league commissioner.
So is that,
but anyway,
yeah.
I always liked Lex. He liked his wife, too.
I was just about to say, does that make Mrs. Morozov the first lady of the KHL then?
Oh, she didn't need Alexei to be the league commissioner for that to be the crown she wears. But my point is, the way they're handling Broderick Jones, they're making him like some Obi-Wan Jabroni swing tackle.
Well, yeah, Pat Meyer used that phrase.
I worry.
Pat Meyer used that phrase when I interviewed him. He's like, young guys like that have to be able to be the swing tackle. Well, how come Broderick Jones never had to be then?
Broderick Jones, you mean Dan Moore?
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, Broderick Jones should have been the starting left tackle from the day he got drafted.
A couple other comments.
The Steelers' way of doing things is misguided and antiquated. And I don't know how many times they have to go 9-8 for us to realize that.
A couple other items here, Mark. This guy, Matt, says Steelers are the Browns, can't pick a QB. Yeah, they're getting back into their territory that they were in between Bradshaw and Ben, like just sort of this wandering, throwing darts at a board and having a different guy every year.
Well, what is who's the quarterback in Cleveland? It's Watson, right?
No, he's talking about the Browns, yeah, prior to Watson. Like that, the Browns have been through a bunch of quarterbacks too.
Yeah, well, the position, the quarterback spot means so much, Tim, and if you don't have the right guy, you got to keep looking for the right guy.
Another guy here says Dak 2025. I wouldn't hate that.
Yeah, they're not going to do it.
Not going to spend the money.
You think the Steelers will pay Dak Prescott $60 million a season?
No, I don't think they'll do it. You're right. I mean, for that money, no, they won't. But if they're going to spend, like if part of the issue that exists with them is they're constantly afraid of what they're going to be able to spend because of what the quarterback is going to be, then at least spend on a quarterback if you're kind of budgeting for it anyway.
It is an utterly clueless organization. And you know what went bad? When Mr. Rooney got feeble and then sadly passed away. Dan Rooney. When Dan Rooney was at the top of his game and overseeing all the decisions, he was merciless. He just ran everything totally businesslike with the only goal being to win. And then he got soft and passed. And art ain't that.
This guy says the Panthers will get slaughtered this weekend. I mean, they're playing Cincinnati. They were 3-9 last year, so I don't think they'll get slaughtered. I mean, maybe he's thinking ahead to West Virginia. That might be what
maybe he's thinking ahead to me not watching. West Virginia plays Albany this week, correct?
Is that the Fighting Greg Gattuso's?
Right, exactly. Coach Gattuso.
Well, I know I'm rooting for in that game. Then I was a big fan of Greg Gattuso.
One of my favorite high school games I ever covered. He was a senior at Seton LaSalle. I was a fledgling, college-age reporter for various publications. The Post-Cadet Suburban editions, a rag in the North Hills called the Free Press, and I covered Seton LaSalle against Knock. And I want to say the 1980 Class AA Whippeal Championship game. And the neutral site was North Allegheny. And there had been this big rainstorm for days, so it was just a sea of mud. It was before they got their turf, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Gattuso played defensive line because he's like 6'2", 260 or whatever, but he also played fullback. And in this mud, and Scene had a good team. They had like Richie Ingold, who went on to be an Arena Football Hall of Famer, believe it or not, did real well at IUP. But they just kept handing the ball to Gattuso, who, like I said, 6'2", 260, whatever. And he just kept plowing through the mud and running people over, running his own guys over. Tim, I've said many times, it's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen on a football field. I wanted to vomit after the second quarter. But they won. They got the job done. I think it was 14-zip.
Mark, tell people about the new show format, which starts on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have a pregame show from 2 till 3. It's 2 till 3 now with me and Tom Opferman. He's going to be the co-host. But everything else is pretty much the same.
So the show stays the same, except that you start an hour earlier, and you and Tom you used to do this with Bob McLaughlin at the 4:30 or 4:45 segment when Bob was your producer, right? Basically.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not going to do this. I mean, I signed a 3-year deal, but my informal plan is to go through the 25-26 hockey season. So 2 more Steeler seasons, 2 more Penguin seasons, and just to make it easier on me.
Well, who knows?
I can see the finish line.
Whenever Sid signs his contract, maybe he'll go out at the same time as Sid then.
I thought about that. Sid will go longer than me for sure.
You think he got at least one more year than you do? At least one more?
I don't care. I'm not going to stay for his sake, for God's sake. He wouldn't stay for mine, Tim. But yeah, so yeah, that's kind of the game plan. But who knows? I mean, I really don't. I'm already having buyer's remorse about deciding to keep going.
Uh-huh.
But I have a lot more time off. That was the big thing here. A lot more time off. So maybe it'll be all right. I don't know.
We'll give our best to Bill Hillgrove if he ever gets up there today.
Well, he got a flat tire. He's not. I mean, I think he's here now, but I think I'm leaving soon.
So Mark is on tomorrow, 2:00.
I have one more stop, Tim. Eddie's Hot Dogs, and then home.
You got through all the donuts. Now it's on to the hot dog place, right?
I had 6 of those donuts in 3 days at Golden Dawn. I had prime rib at Tavern 618. I hung out with my friends Rob and Becky that own Shell House Funeral Home. I went to Silver Shores the first night here and had their seafood pasta. So I pretty much hit all the stops except for Eddie. Oh, Casey's Ice Cream. I gained like 500 pounds here.
Well, Mark is on at 2. Make sure you start listening at 2 now on 105.9 The X. We're back next week, courtesy of our new sponsor, Bella Construction.